And so we have a wonderful panelist here today. We have Michael Neese, and he is a longtime friend of Sustainability Matters, and recycling expert with a myriad career working in this industry, and is the recycling manager in the City of Winchester. And so he's here to speak with us today and share his expertise in this field and kind of how he's worked with different municipalities around, especially Virginia, but especially in smaller localities like the City of Winchester, outside of some of our major metropolises. So, Michael, welcome. We are so excited to have you. It's a pleasure to have you on again.
Thanks for having me. And that was my comment in the chat, I think you were referring to, where I said, "Oh, Rick, you must be the expert she's talking about." Uh, I think Rick from the Bottle Bill, he and I have run across each other at the Virginia Recycling Association once or twice.
Very cool. So we got some friends in the house. I love it. That's amazing. So to kick us off, I know it's been a few years since we've had you on, so I'd love just to have an update on the state of the recycling industry and kind of where we're at, what's gone on the past couple years, and really kind of what are those impacts that you've seen locally in your community?
Oh, probably the biggest change I've seen in the last few years. Gosh, so pre-pandemic, we were talking about how paper was becoming a larger commodity. That it was something that was more quickly reclaimed, especially the OCC cardboard. Uh, Man, has that really come into fruition? It is far and away a larger material or a larger part of the material stream now than it's ever been. We also, on a positive side, we see a whole bunch less of the styrofoam waste. Uh, Used to see a lot of polystyrene, the either the pellets or the preformed cubes that would, of course, get mixed in with paper where it shouldn't be. But now we see much less of that. There's a lot more of the preformed cardboard and paper to use as packaging material.
That's a really good sign. That's a very
Mhm.
positive piece. Overall, on maybe a wider industry, has there been any large changes that you've noticed?
So not a happy one, but yes. Every facility I've visited in the last 2 years has either updated or is in the process of updating fire suppression systems due to lithium batteries coming into the material streams. And some of the fires are just devastating. There are some horrible, horrible things that happen when those end up in the machines.
So making sure we're not putting those batteries, really of any kind, into the recycling stream is highly important.
Yeah, you want to dispose of them properly. There are ways for them to be recycled. It is not with your other recyclable materials.
So reiterate, please do not put your batteries in with your recycling. Where on This is an extra question. Since we got on the battery topic, where might people be able to actually take those?
There's a bunch of different places. There are a lot of retailers such as Staples, Best Buy. Check your local ones. There's also e-cycling programs that are put on by the communities. Check your local programs for the drop-offs there. And there's a few buybacks and mailback programs as well. In our area, we also have a store called Battery Mart. That's one where you can recycle a lot of different types of batteries within. There was a link. Oh man, I can't find it now. I put it into the notes page. It's for Earth 911. It is a wonderful resource that is frequently updated. They send me and the other recycling coordinators emails about once a year, and just to check on the status of local programs. So you put in what you're looking for and your zip code, and pull it all up.
I believe Kenny just popped that into
Ah.
the chat. So if anybody wants to check that out, you can feel free to click on that link to Earth 911. Thank you for that added information. Um, and you were just speaking of you've worked and toured facilities in so many different areas and working with some of these local governments. Um, what might be some misconceptions that either local residents have or local governments have, that we can dispel a little bit tonight about recycling?
Oh man. Uh, you know, to put it in nice ways, right? uh, I, some of it is intentional. I'll just go ahead and get that out of the way. We used to call it greenwashing, but there's a nice scam where they try to, different corporations and industries try to make their products seem more widely recyclable or sustainable than what they are. The plastic industry itself is notorious for it, where they'll put the chasing arrows on every material, regardless of whether it can be recycled or not. There's ones that, of course, make claims that it's recyclable. And so everybody will put that into their bin or into their drop off program. And it's could be recycled in like one place in Malaysia. So that's how they get away with saying, oh, yeah, you can recycle it anywhere. No. So misinformation is a bad one. Last Super Bowl, there was a whole series of commercials for recycling plastic bottles with the lids on. I'm sure everybody's seen that. If anybody took the time to follow the link at the very end of that, it's great. It leads to their webpage where it says the lids are not recyclable and that it only helps in the recycling of some facilities for plastic bottles. uh, the material reclamation where they facility they go to, it depends on how they're processed. If it is, I don't want to get too technical. Let's say if it's just going over tumblers or up a conveyor belt, right? It doesn't matter if the lid is on or not. The lid will get separated out to the trash. Now, if it's one of the float-based systems, right, similar to like a water system, having that lid on will allow it to float at a right level where it can be skimmed off, and that's great. Uh, but those are primarily in Europe and not really few other places in the world. So because of that, they took out the whole ad campaign to make their products look much better for the handful of places it's okay.
So what might they be able to do to make sure that we're not falling into that pitfall and making sure that our any things that are coming to these facilities actually do make it into being properly recycled?
Yep. So you always want to make sure that you are putting the right things together and getting it to the right place. That's talk to whomever is picking up your materials, whether it's the collectors, the drop-off facility, the company that manages them, their website, wherever whoever you pay the bill to. uh, Find that information out. And in 3 days is going to be America Recycles Day. And that's one of the big promises is that everybody will sign the pledge and say that they're going to learn more about recycling in their community. And please do. It's very important we put the right materials in the right place. In our area, we have a place where plastic bags can go. Not all areas are like that. And so we have a real strong community recycling plastic bags, which is great, asterisk, as long as it's going to that correct place, because they have to be processed in a very specific way. If they're mixed in with your other plastics or with the paper, they're not going to get recycled. They're going to go through machinery that can't process it, and it's going to shred it up and it's going to ruin some of the other recycling.
So lots of impacts when things are wish cycled or put into the bin without, I guess, knowing really where it if that's the best way. On that same vein, are there any particular materials, and this I understand is very dependent on where you are, but in general, are there any particular materials that are extra challenging or expensive, maybe for smaller communities to recycle?
The heavier they are, this is just a terrible rule of thumb, but the heavier they are tends to be the harder they are to recycle. So steel, aluminum, tin cans, pretty light, high value, easy to recycle. Plastic bottles, pretty light, pretty easy to recycle. Paper, cardboard, same way. But then you start getting into, say, scrap metal, right? Well, it's still aluminum, steel, and tin, but it's heavier, it's harder, it's going to take different equipment. So that has to go to a different place. Glass bottles, right? Heavier than plastic, harder to transport, and they shatter. So you don't want to put that in. Again, if you're a single stream, check with your location. Most places don't want that in with the paper because the little bits of glass will embed in the paper. And so then when the paper company is trying to make, I don't know, toilet paper, they're not really fond of glass being in it. Well, I'm not fond of it being in toilet paper. So,
I think we can all agree on that. Very
so
much
that
so.
tends to be a harder one. And it's also hard, especially in the entire state of Virginia. Uh, it can't just go through a material reclamation facility. Glass has to be sorted out by the temperatures at which it melts and by the colors. It has very specific processing. In the industry, we call it beneficiation. And so it has to go to a glass beneficiation facility so that it can then be recycled. Virginia has zero of them in the state.
Mm,
There's one in Pennsylvania, it's close to the northern end of the state. There's one in North Carolina, close to the southern end of the state. So the bulk of our recycled glass either gets used on site, kind of like a downcycling, or it gets sent out of state. And glass is heavy, that's more diesel to get it there.
wow, that's all very helpful. And something that we don't normally think about when we're just sticking our pieces into the recycling. So, switching gears just a little bit, what is something that maybe municipalities or counties or smaller cities um, can they maybe work together? I know cost is such a big piece in actually having these materials end up being truly recycled. So, is there ways that they can be more efficient and reduce costs by joining together, or I guess how can local communities handle that?
Yeah, that is a great way, and we're seeing that in the Shenandoah Valley right now. I'm hoping that's something we're going to see replicate across the state. I know the Virginia Recycling Association is loosely working on it now with our elected officials, but uh, we keep referring to each community being able to recycle different things, right? Because of what are the local programs, what are the local resources where the materials can go. When we start joining together, we have more bulk. And with more bulk, then we can reach these other markets. It becomes more efficient to do so. Uh, it also makes it less confusing on the consumer. You know, if you're moving from Edinburgh to Woodstock to Winchester to be able to recycle the same things. We're all in the Shenandoah Valley. We're very close to similar resources, but some communities may elect to collect materials that are more expensive to process, and other ones won't because of the bulk of the material. But if we all start working together, then we could. And I think what you might be referring to is the grant the Northern Shenandoah Valley Regional Commission had gotten. We lost a lot of our curbside programs, a lot. I should have looked the number up ahead of time. I want to say it was close to 30. It was a lot of communities that was gone. Some of them replaced it with drop off. Some of them just lost recycling access altogether. And this infrastructure grant is helping them coordinate all of their programs together, picking up the same materials with the same vendors, the same information going out, the same bins. They do have the choice of drop off programs or curbside, but that allows them to collectively bargain, if you will, and has a higher impact.
Amazing, very cool. Um, What so we talked about them working together, to maybe improve the efficiency, but it sounds like that it would expand and be a little broader. And it does sound like a lot of this is about community outreach. So I know Winchester has done a lot of work in this. So what might be some ways that local organizations and local leaders can do to encourage their residents to recycle properly, to increase the effectiveness.
So, number one, learn what's acceptable in the program, right? And then talk to the people that are running the program and ask them what their biggest difficulties are.
Mm,
There's some similar stories, of course, across the state, but each community, again, is different. Find out what those hurdles are and then help them overcome it. One of the things we've done in Winchester, it hasn't made a lot of people happy, but it has made the program stronger overall. We've started issuing these little oops tags on the recycling bins. Uh, the collectors are not a big fan, right? They just want to grab the bin, put it in the truck, and go. But after much convincing. Uh, Knowing that collecting the right materials helps the program overall and then keeps them from having to make stops at wrong materials. It's better to just go ahead and tag that material and say, sorry, we couldn't take it. You have nuclear waste in it, or what, plastic bags, or whatever it is. Uh, Now, the homeowners really don't like that. Uh, and I, and I get the phone calls and I empathize with them. You thought you were doing the right thing and you set it out, and now yeah, you wouldn't even take it. I get it. I get it. But we have to recycle right. We have to do it the right way, because if I'm putting out a bad material, then not only is my recycling contaminated, when that goes on the truck, it contaminates all of it. Sure, most of it would still be able to be recovered, but at the end of the day, when that truck emptied out, we're still going to have to separate that material back out into the proper waste stream. And yeah, it doesn't make people happy, but it makes the program happy. You know?
So what has it been like in it sounds like this is a work in progress and something that has taken a lot of effort on y'all's part. Have you seen an impact in the efficiency of the recycling that you're getting?
Oh
Um,
yeah, our contamination rate just dropped dramatically when we started doing
that's
that.
great.
Double digit drops. It was great.
And it's just a little oops sticker that they stick on there. Okay.
Yep. I tried to make it look, nice, but
Yes. Yes.
tone is hard to convey through text.
Yes, very, very, very true. But it sounds like that has been a very impactful piece that you've added, and it's all about getting that buy-in. What were maybe some ways that you used, or maybe some of your team members used, that allowed y'all to get the buy-in of the people on the ground doing the work, and then as well the community members?
For the people on the ground doing the work, the easiest way to get the buy-in, I just worked with them. I went out there and did it, and I could show them on the same route. Hey, you were picking up this many stops with this much bad material, but you tag it in the next week. Look, now you're not having to stop and pick up this bad materials. You're not having to handle bags of dog waste or turkeys or whatever was ending up in there. And once they could experience it, then the buy-in was there. And it took some time, but we got there. For the community members, Kenny's actually probably a better example and person to speak with about that. He probably remembers early on when we partnered. I had showed him some of the videos and like outreach things that I've done, and they'd gotten like 20, maybe 25 views, and then he reworks in his magic, and it's like, oh, 2.5 million. Nothing
That's
against the
special.
government. I mean, I work for the government, but that's not, is social media attractive? You know what I mean? Like, who goes on to Facebook or Instagram like, man, what is my local government doing? That's what I need, right? No, we don't follow that. We want to follow somebody that's fun and entertaining and not a bureaucrat. So,
Understandable, but I love that y'all have been able that Kenny's been able to amplify the cool programs that y'all have been able to accomplish. So hopefully we can help with some of that community outreach. Um, that's wonderful. So can the residents themselves, if maybe people that are on our call here, or people in their local community, how can they advocate to their own governments to have better recycling systems that are effective and efficient?
yeah, you've done this just in the correct order. So number one, finding out about the program, right? Number two, finding out what the hurdles are, and number three, expressing those to their elected officials. Let your elected officials know what you want. It The power is solely in the hands of the public. I cannot stress that enough. Winchester is a great example of it. 3 years ago, our community had, well, let me back up a little farther. 5 years ago, our community had effectively stopped recycling glass. The material reclamation facilities weren't accepting it. There was no additional places for it to go. We had to put those stickers on and say, yeah, sorry, last week you could put glass in your bin, this week you can't. It was hard and horrible. And the people spoke up that they really wanted a solution. So we were able to give them one. We purchased a machine and we process it here locally. Uh, that machine wasn't just invented 30 years ago when we got it, right? It's been around for a long while. That's an answer that's existed for a long time. But until the people demanded it, until they spoke to their elected officials and showed them they wanted it, it doesn't matter if Michael Recycle goes, "Hey, give me $100,000. I can do this thing." No, Mike, we're not giving you $100,000. But when the citizens come in and say, "We need to do this," oh, well, yeah, fund them, get it. It is entirely in their hands.
Wonderful. That's always a wonderful sign when in knowing that that can be the case. That's absolutely very cool. So, on a similar vein, but can maybe a broader topic. Um, so, how can some of these communities, or maybe even locals, within their communities, can they take steps toward other types of waste reduction that maybe is beyond recycling? I guess what might be some other programs that you've heard of, maybe composting, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's recycling is the third of the three R's, right? Reduce and reuse are the first two ones. Composting, technically not recycling. I get it, but that's going to have your largest impact in terms of overall solid waste volume and methane gases. That's your largest one, and you can follow the three R's with it if you switch one out. But reduce your food waste, right? Kenny's got lots of videos on that. I got quite a few books on it over there. Gardening, eating whole foods, and then composting what's left. Not overbuying food, eating leftovers. Yeah, reduce, reuse, and then compost in that specific one. Right now, composted is limited in most of our state. There's not a lot of access to facilities for post-consumer waste. Uh, it's backyard composting for the majority of the state. The United States Composting Council has some great resources. They're trying to make inroads into the state. This would be a great area for citizens to target and say that it's something they want. Uh, and then talk to your elected officials about how to get it. There's been a few pilot programs. Let's see, Northern Virginia, some of y'all might be able to speak up. I think it's in your area now where they have a vendor come through. It is not their solid waste hauler, it is not their recycler, it is not their government employees. It's a third party contractor that comes in and I believe is subsidized partially by the resident and partially by the government itself to allow them to uh, compost. That is taken a fair ways outside of the city, if I remember right. I want to say Alexandria or Fairfax out into their county and not their city. Um, Hopefully that pilot's still going well. Last time I heard an update on it, it sounded like it was. Hopefully that's something we can expand throughout the state. Uh, if you live in an apartment building, composting's hard. Backyard composting is ideally done in the backyard. When I lived in an apartment, I used the vermiposters and composted with worms under the sink. Uh, Wife wasn't a big fan. Hey, man, you do what you can. There's also some electric ones on the market. You do have to make that trade off of energy use. And if you're making compost in an apartment, you also have to have a use for it, at the end of the day. Uh, so a couple different options. And again, if you're in an apartment, that's an entire building's worth of people with the same problem that you can join together and try and find a solution. If you're in a community that doesn't pick it up curbside, that's an entire community that you could get together with. Sorry if I'm rambling too much. You'll have to
No,
keep
that was
me right on
perfect.
time.
I really love that. Um, so that was definitely, composting can be, we've done whole webinars on it.
Yes.
So you feel free to check out our previous webinars on composting. Um, and are there any other, maybe waste streams that communities can work to reduce? And because recycling can be one stream, but what might be some other ways that, either individuals or communities at large could reduce their waste?
So another I'll call it low hanging fruit. A lot of the time, when we talk about reduce, we talk about what the individual can do, right? You need to buy less and you need to use less. And that is a way. But when you're talking to a community, it's harder to pin all these little things down. Um, and I could go off on too many tangents here, but I'll stay on topic. One thing a community then could do instead would be to get together for extended producer responsibility laws. That is, I'll call it a low hanging fruit. It is a big challenge. There's only a few states that have been able to pull it off so far. I'd love to see it nationwide, uh, but it targets the materials that are hard, if not impossible, for the waste management system to manage properly. Whether it's through recycling or composting, where there's just not a real good home for this material, and it makes the producer of that material responsible for it. We mentioned the bottle bill earlier. That's kind of an example of it. What it does, if it was to ever make it to Virginia, would be to create markets so that we would have a beneficiation facility for glass to go to. And then from there, places like Owensville, Illinois, for example, they're a glass manufacturer, a bottle manufacturer in Virginia that would want to purchase that material.
So making sure that we have that circular economy, getting things back into the stream. Very, very important. So one last question from our end before we hop into our wonderful participants' questions. I guess what gives you hope in the direction that recycling is headed that you've seen the past few years?
Oh, I a lot of people are more comfortable calling out lies, and that makes me very happy. It used to be that it would just be an excuse, recycling was something for the niche environmental groups to do, not so much for ordinary people. Uh, but then when it started being seen as a normal day-to-day operation and a sales pitch, people were more willing to call out some of the falsehoods and to make sure things are done properly. And that makes me more optimistic at seeing it accepted and done properly.
Amazing. That's great. So, and hopefully some of this community outreach has helped with that and dispelled a lot of um, these things that we've believed that may not have been true for a long time.
Yeah, it's about asking questions. Ooh, do you have those pictures I sent from before? The
I do. I'll include them on the email. They're a good giggle. That's for sure. I'll send them out to everybody. Um, so we do have quite a few questions, so I'd love to
Ooh,
hop into
great.
those, make sure we have time to answer these. So let's see. We'll just go in order here. So our first question that was posed was that only a small percentage of recyclables that are actually recycled, um, and the participant said 9% is the number that's in their head. Is that true? And how do we focus on recycling or when we hear that number is so tiny?
The only time I've heard the number that tiny is in terms of plastic. uh, where if you take 100% of the plastic from the paint in my office, the particle board of my desk, my glass lenses, plastic bags, if you take all the sum of plastic, only a very minuscule amount of it is recycled, and that tends to be the plastic bottles. Excuse me. And so two ways to stop that: extended producer responsibility, right? If it can't be treated properly, then it's their responsibility to do something about it. Two, making sure the programs are recycling it. There are still places, I won't call out any specific ones, that accept all plastics in their curbside recycling, even though they're only going to recycle the plastic bottles. The rest of it's just waste. Uh, their opinion is that it's too hard for people to know the proper thing. And so they'd rather cast a wide net and get the trash in with it. Uh, in terms of overall materials being recycled, we're closer to 30% um, of it being recycled. I don't know if that much help. I mean, that's still a
Yeah, that's
minority,
great.
but
But and I think one way that that number could be increased by quite a lot is by people knowing what can and cannot be recycled.
you know,
So like you were saying earlier.
I have a little
Um,
follow-up on that.
yes,
Um,
Kenny.
so I feel like people often hear that 9% number for plastic bottles, and they assume that that means
oh,
you put the plastic bottle in the recycling bin, only 9% of those are actually recycled. But what you're saying is that is not how you should be interpreting that statistic.
correct. Uh, yeah, if you look at all the ones that are produced that make it then to the recycle bin. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you
You
very
have to think in North America, we still have communities that do not have access to recycling or proper waste disposal. There are still open fire burn pits in the United States. I know we see them on the news of India and maybe some third world nations, but it is still here domestically as well.
Hopefully we can change that.
Yeah, sorry, there was my optimism coming up.
No, that's great. We need the optimism, that's for sure. A question about some of these particular plastics. So, another participant said they live in Frederick County and they can recycle 1 and 2 bottles, but only the containers with the necks, but can't recycle others that are the same plastic material, but like the clamshell. So the same, sorry, let me read this properly. But we cannot recycle other number 1 and 2 plastics, the clamshell like strawberry boxes. But
Yep.
if they are made of the same material, why can't we
Nope.
recycle all ones and twos?
Nope. They see that's where they're tricking you. It's not the same material. They want you to think it is, right? It's got the same number. That number is meaningless. That number is put on there to intentionally trick you into thinking the product is recyclable when it's not. The base element, the base plastic that might be in there, might be about the same, but you've touched the plastic. You know the plastic in that clamshell does not behave the same as in your Tide bottle or your detergent bottle or your plastic water bottle, right? It is a different plastic and it has different additives to it. Those additives make it behave a certain way. Uh, for example, the same plastic that makes your disposable cutlery is the same number plastic that's in baby diapers to make it absorbent, but it's not the same plastic and it can't be processed the same way. Uh, the number is frankly a lie.
Hmm, very good to know. So more look at the shape than the number.
Yep. Talk to your program managers. I think Frederick County says narrow neck bottles numbers 1 and 2. They put it in that order for that reason, so that you see it as the materials, and then the very last thing you rely on is the number.
Hmm. I did have one specific question about your oops tags,
Yeah.
um, which people liked in here.
Well,
So
good. That's good to hear.
somebody asked, are the haulers issuing the oops tag or is it the city doing it?
For Winchester, the city is the hauler. So it is both of us. Uh, Other program managers I speak to, I encourage them to tie that into their hauler. Uh, they often want the driver of the truck to do it as being like the head of the crew. Uh, I recommend it right on the back of the truck. The material handler, the person touching it, should be the one doing it.
Great advice. Um, let's see. Okay, so another question. Can you talk about waste to energy facilities in Virginia?
Yeah. I was thinking of them when I was talking about the lithium fires. So I've been to two recently. One of them is in Fairfax. Uh, in Sorga? No, no, no. That's a different one. Yeah, I won't remember the name. Sorry. Uh, Very cool, right? It's like Star Wars, that big claw that comes down into the trash chamber and picks it up. The chamber is huge. Entire tractor and trailers can unload there. It's an amazing process. And then it goes into their system as the fuel source that when it releases heat, that's then generating steam for generating electricity. Frederick County, our landfill, well, most landfills have some sort of methane recapturing system. Most of the flares have been phased out now, but they do still need to capture it because methane is a greenhouse gas. Frederick County uses it to turn into electricity, and it feeds their entire facility before going back out into the grid. So, yeah, there's a lot of good waste to energy ones. There are some. West Virginia, I think, is the nearest one to us. They will put the material in three separate categories. It's friable, non-friable, and recyclable. So you would put all the trash in together, and then they would separate it in those three streams, and then essentially incinerate it. There's a very little amount of ash that comes out and generate electricity off the rest.
Very cool. Maybe we almost need a whole thing talking about this new technology. Very, very cool. So switching, actually, we have almost another question on our oops tags. Um, and this is from a participant in Fairfax County and said that it is very unclear to them what can be recycled. And so they said calling for clarification wasn't helpful as the answer seems to be it depends. The oops
Ooh,
tag sounds like a great or sounds great, but why not be clear, whether through photos or some system to identify recyclable materials so that people aren't guessing? Because people tend to do better when they know better. Is that something that y'all have considered?
yeah, and 20 years ago when I started this, I believed education was the way. When each person receives their recycling bin to start the program, they receive an information sheet of what to put in that recycling bin. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, we come by and put an oops sticker on it. Because even though they've had the sticker, it- recycling isn't the primary thing people think about. I get it. I think about it every day. It's my job, but most people don't. And so they will slip up and make mistakes and will assume, oh, you know what, this goes in there. And they need that reminder. Uh, and it should go out with the bin. I agree. Education is the first step. Unfortunately, it's not the only step. It won't be enough.
So not a foolproof answer to that one, but pieces can be adapted and hopefully little by little it can change. Are there so another question. Are there still some colors of glass that are not accepted anywhere?
Ooh, not to my knowledge. We take all glass that we crush and process here. We don't have any color limits. A size limit, 8-inch diameter glass bottles is about the biggest we can take. Now, I know some are more valuable than others, but not to us because we're not going to separate them out.
No worries. Okay, so another question in a different vein. What are the barriers that are keeping Virginia from adopting the bottle bill?
Political will. I think that's your biggest barrier. Uh, it, our legislators, it's hard to sell them on charging people money to do business, you know, or charging people money to start up something. That's a tough sell. They want to see the results before they spend the money, and unfortunately, the bottle bill doesn't work in that method. And yeah, it's a tough one.
Do you
Mm.
know how some other states that have implemented this, if there were any successful methods that they were able to do this?
Yeah, without going too long into the history of it, Virginia sort of has a bottle bill. Uh, all states do in one way or another. Uh, Ours is just not direct redemption. So the little bit of money per bottle that's charged goes into the litter grant and recycling fund. And then that is distributed out through the Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, uh, part of the state government, to all the municipalities and their partner organizations based on population, or for some competitive projects, you make a proposal and then your proposal is weighed against other ones. And so it's kind of a grant program, either direct grant by population or by your pitch of your program. We could get away from that and do direct redemption to people, but we would need to build that infrastructure. And then you're going to have a little bit more pushback from bureaucrats in the system that want that grant money. And I'm a recipient of that money. Winchester normally gets between $6,000 and $10,000 a year for our population. Would we be willing to give that up for a statewide glass redemption program? I think so, but it would be up to my elected officials.
Very cool. So one last question. I think this is a good one to end on. Um, so Anonymous has said, so we need truth in advertising. Companies shouldn't be allowed to put these symbols on products if they're not recyclable. We do need grassroots movements to demand that. And so they guess that this starts at a local level, and how?
So the first thing I would do is, much like the pictures you're going to share, ask about the claim. Your product contains recyclable material? How much? Your product is able to be recycled? Where? Find the truth to it and then go from there.
Where might they go from there? Is there any other steps to that?
Well, yeah, that's when you're going to start calling them out on what's true and untrue. And that's when you would start using that, in my opinion, as a great example for extended producer responsibility, or even for the bottle bill to say, hey, these things aren't being done the way they're claimed. We need to do it a new way. And they need to be responsible for it because they're the ones causing the problem.
So to reiterate, um, you can find out from the products that you're using, and do some research to inform yourself, but as well call out those companies, and then we can also talk with our local legislator. It sounds like our local communities can have a large impact on that, and then as well our state legislators as well.
Yeah,
Are there any?
we've seen that growing in Fairfax and is it Alexandria, uh, two communities that have put plastic bag bans in effect.
Mhm. Okay. And I live in one of those. It's great. I appreciate it. Are there any other tips or tricks or things that you'd like to share to wrap us up today?
Yeah, so I'm pretty negative. Right? You all have probably picked up on that. Try and stay positive. Uh, Little mistakes aren't the end of the world. Try not to ascribe malice and negative intents to places. The corporations, at the end of the day, they're trying to make money. They're not trying to poison the world. We grew up with Captain America. I know they looked like, evil pig dog polluters, and they're not doing some nice things. But it's not because they want to kill us all. We need to find a way to either change their motive or make their motive match our intentions, right? So get it, where they're still making money, but without the negative impact, and where they don't feel like they need to lie to us to do it.